We're in the TechCrunch studio today with Anthony Goldbloom, who's CEO and founder of Kaggle. Anthony, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us just at a high level, what is Kaggle?
So Kaggle, the vision behind Kaggle is that data science is really challenging to do well. Nowadays everybody calls themselves a data scientist.
Yes.
You get a 40%. You'd be very sensible to do so because you get a 40% rise. So what Kaggle's all about is finding the world's best data scientists and qualifying them through what we call public competitions. Then once some of the world's best data scientists have been discovered, so we put them against each other in public competitions, we then invite them to work on private competitions and private projects.
So you said a couple interesting things there. One is that anyone can call themselves a data scientist, so you actually use competitions, right, to create signaling and ranking for data scientists. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we have 70,000 data scientists signed up to the site. Okay. Each of them ranked from 1 to 70,000 based on how they've performed in public competitions.
And how did you, because you've been working on this for a while, I think it'd be interesting if you could explain how you actually organized all the data scientists, years ago, and you were in Australia at the time? Yeah,
that's right. So the company started in Australia. And really the first thing that we did to get data scientists interested was to put up interesting data sets and challenging problems. It's very difficult for data scientists to get access to cool data sets and cool and novel data sets and interesting problems. So, the first few data sets were things like, predicting travel times on a major road in Sydney, Australia. Where would you get such rich travel data from? Predicting the progression of HIV viral load for an academic in Pennsylvania, predicting the results from the Eurovision Song Contest. So the first step was to get hold of interesting data sets and interesting problems. And then secondly, not surprisingly, it was publicizing the existence of this competition platform. And to begin with, I started with things like statistical mailing lists, both that are popular in academia. The BBC stats show got hold of the Eurovision Song Contest as a big deal in Europe. It was, I'd set that up as a competition, partly as a bit of a publicity stunt, and it got picked up on the BBC.
How did you decide to focus on matching a data set and organizing the data scientists around a competition?
Yeah, so the idea came out of I think late 2007, I won an internship to The Economist magazine. So they had an essay competition and my essay ended up winning. And so I went over to London and was writing for the finance and economics section for 3 months. For 2.5 months, I read about the global financial crisis because it was early 2008. And at the end, I kind of pitched a piece on something I was pretty interested in called predictive modeling. And being a journalist, as you know, gives you great access. So I could call up just about anyone and say, hey, I'm writing a piece on predictive modeling. How much of a priority is this for your company? And what are the big bottlenecks to actually getting predictive modeling going? So it's a wonderful way to do market research. Through many of those conversations, I was very frustrated by the fact that I was listening to the problems these people wanted to solve. Things like customer retention and customer acquisition and, a lot of the things that data mining and predictive modeling are used for today. And thinking, wow, I really feel like I could do a wonderful job at solving those problems. But they're going to look at my background, they're going to see that I'm an economist, not a statistician, not a computer scientist. Whereas, I knew I could code, I knew I could do statistics, but I had no real way to kind of prove that I could do a really good job on that problem. And so the idea was to build a meritocratic labour market for data scientists where people like me who wanted to show that they had the skills rather than...
without the credentialing.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the problem that the company was looking to solve.
Got it. And so when let's talk a little bit about the formation of the company, you moving here, and what I think is really interesting is to talk about, big data is a term that's overused, right? And it's very hot now, or it's been hot for a couple of years. It can mean anything from, bottom of the stack to the application layer. And what I think is interesting is that you've actually created a marketplace. Like your business model is a marketplace, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, we're a marketplace in that we join companies, we join companies with really challenging predictive modeling problems or data science problems with the world's best data scientists. So to give you an example of what I mean by that, a really nice example. So Merck, for instance, recently hosted a drug discovery competition with us. So Merck historically look at, they take chemical compounds and they try and they need to decide which chemical compounds are most promising to treat a given disease. It's an important aspect of drug discovery. There's a technique called chemoinformatics where you analyze the chemical compounds that you have tested in the lab before. Based on the results from those lab tests, you kind of train a model that will synthetically work out what likely effect different drugs that you've never tested before have, and therefore you can you build a model that helps you prioritize which drugs you test in the lab over the next year, because you can only test a handful of drugs. We've done, competitions for companies like Allstate taking claims and
so let's talk about that specifically, right? An insurance company like Allstate, I think it'd be really interesting if you can just explain, at a very basic level, why the customer, in this case the insurance company, is interested in the competition.
Yeah.
And then secondly, how your business model is not providing a product or a service, it's actually creating a marketplace to connect those companies in a period of time, right? Sure. With the right set of data scientists.
So Allstate, any insurance company makes, the most important decision an insurance company makes is who is going to crash their car. And so they have a team of a very strong actuarial team. And those actuaries, actuaries are trained using certain techniques. Now, because an insurance company's business is totally oriented around predicting risk or predicting who's going to crash their car, it's it's all good and well for Allstate to try the same set of techniques that their actuaries know and were trained on. However, they don't know. They know that there are other techniques that might work really well on their problem. So in the Allstate case, the problem was predicting, basically bodily injury claims or insurance claims, depending on what type of vehicle somebody drives. This is for auto insurance. And so in that case, what ended up happening was somebody used a totally different technique, a technique that is not familiar in the actuarial industry. And
you mean like a different statistical technique?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're able to get a 270% lift over what Allstate had been able to do before. Not again because just because actuarial science is familiar with one set of techniques, there's a whole ream of other techniques that were obviously suitable in that particular case.
And are you finding that it's easy now for you to attract more and more data scientists around the world? And are they coming from all over, or are they sort of concentrated in certain parts of the world?
Yeah, so our user base is certainly growing at an accelerating rate. I think we closed, the company had been running for a year and a half, and we're at, I think, about 11,000 data scientists a year ago when we closed our fundraising round. Today we're at 70,000 data scientists, so that gives you a kind of sense of the growth of the community. But part of the reason the community has been growing so strongly is because we give them really interesting problems. We just launched every data scientist stream a competition for General Electric with really detailed flight data predicting predicting flight delays. Every time we put up a really interesting data set like that, it attracts a whole class of new data scientists who had always wanted to work on flight data, for instance. And what we also find is that competitions tend to be addictive. So once somebody has done their first competition, they see where they are on the leaderboard. They just want to do that little bit better and that little bit better. So not only is the user base growing very quickly, but we find the user base is very sticky. Those who come tend to hang around.
And would you say, like, sort of as a final question, that you're lucky and fortunate to have all these data scientists coming and created a nice mechanism for them? Would you say the biggest challenge moving forward for your company is trying to convince more and more companies to sort of open up their data and sort of convert over to this model rather than trying to acquire teams?
Yeah, so on one side we have 70,000 data scientists, and I make the point that that side of Kaggle grows like a consumer tech company. You know, there's nothing, there's no enterprise sales process or anything stopping it from growing, so it just grows and grows and grows. The challenge we have is that the other side of our business is an enterprise sales process. So it takes, you know, it can take 6 months from first conversation to closing a deal with a large customer. So there's obviously, you know, there's this, I think a lot of marketplaces face this. There's sort of a difference in velocity between the two sides. And so we're often thinking about how do we kind of keep these two sides growing at around the same pace.
Great.
It's something that we spend a lot of time on.
Great. Well, Anthony, congrats on all the success, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Emil.
Awesome.
How did that